Okay. We've known each other for some time.
Yes.
And our lives have gone their own courses, and we've worked actively within the traditional structure of real estate development, real estate property, retail centric, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And in the last 18 months or so, we've found ourselves collectively in the same place where we've sort of moved forward in our careers, leaving the safety of representative motherships into a new place where we can challenge, think, and maybe be a bit more provocative and do some things. And it happened at the time that we ended up finding a project together and working together, which is great fun. But what we're here to talk about is just a little bit about from your world, the world of the occupier, the world of the provider of the service, shall we say, to the customer. I mean, how all that's changed. I mean, there's so much going on in the world of commerce these days that your world is truly different.
Yeah, it's changed dramatically in quite a short period of time, exacerbated by COVID and all that's gone on there. It's been quite interesting, as obviously having worked in retail property world in a big corporate, shopping centre capacity, with one eye on what's happening, locally and in smaller, more interesting kind of organic developments. It's changed, before our eyes. And I think when our sort of paths crossed again, it's in a serendipitous way, the opportunity presented itself to work together, and I thought, who better to really challenge things with than Paul Hanegraaf.
Well, it's fun. You're sweet. But it was a challenge because it was a project that took us outside of the retail center, outside of the high street, in a position where we had to actually fight for commercial representation.
Mm-hmm.
And all of what we started seeing in the marketplace today had a bearing on that. But moving that project aside, what dynamics do you think now are driving your work, your marketplace, in a way that it hopefully it'll move the needle considerably? What things are out there?
I think the shift in the consumer and the shift in the occupier collectively moves the needle. So we've moved from a place where the landlord held all the cards, the prime pitches were prime, and people would pay exorbitant rents that ended up being unsustainable, and everyone was caught up in this bidding for the most prime locations. That's way behind us now. And we look at the brands becoming a bit more shrewd about where they invest their money, whether it be online, whether it be physically, whether it be direct to consumer. There's so many different models now. You look at retailers that have subscription models, or removing that layer of that barrier of the physical interaction. And I think we're actually coming back from that a little bit, and then really appreciating the interaction with the consumer. So we're sort of in that transitional phase, and from a property owner's perspective, being receptive to those changes and looking at how does that impact us commercially, what does the lease need to do to respond to that, is ever evolving.
Because the consumer has so many different choices now.
Oh yes.
And so much more knowledge in their hands, literally in their hands.
Yeah.
The ability to research and garner insight and reviews and everything. It's not so straightforward as it was before, and the marketplace is really segmented, bifurcated more.
Yeah, and the rate of change and evolution in technology versus the rate of change and evolution in physical property, they're just worlds apart. We cannot, as a property industry, respond as quickly as the technology is moving the consumer forward.
Is the order of rate of change in property is just dinosaurs. I mean, they can't move, as opposed to the order of rate of change in consumer capacity to discover the new and enjoy the new. And work in ways to enjoy their legacy, more truthfully and honestly. We still go to M&S, we still trust M&S, we still have M&S food, but yet we're out here in Shoreditch.
Yeah.
Having the hunt, and that dynamic is happy.
And there's sort of two different sides to the retail offer. There's the functional, like you say, the trusted brands that you want, almost that ease of access and that ease of customer experience, whether it be click and collect, whether it be order online, deliver to your door. It's just you trust them and you want it to be an easy transaction. And then you have the pleasurable interaction and the pleasurable pursuit that is retail and shopping, and it is renowned to be the British the top British pursuit is retail therapy. So that still lives, and it's changing, and the industry.
We were talking a minute ago about how maybe, and it's a long shot, it's a long view, that there might just be the development of the evolution of a couple of streams of occupier, where there's the larger format, the more traditional, the deliverers of that known, customary, stable service and product and experience. But then there's what historically has been seen as the one-off, two-off, meantime independent. That turns into a completely holistic sector of its own. It's got gravitas, it's got dynamic, by collective it's got covenant and maybe value. Yeah. How does that come into play? I mean, it might be better in a village center than a shopping center, but can you see something like that ever happening?
There's definitely a split, and like you say, the need for the everyday servicing retail offer is still there. It will be there forever. Everyone's going to need somewhere to pop in and get their essentials. It becomes maybe a bit slicker, and maybe it shrinks in size. So the shopping centres are 200 units, 300 units, not necessarily fit for purpose. And alongside that, the strength of the collective, I think that's it. There's always these little gems of independence that are, tucked away, and you stumble across them. But if owner, operator, developers can harness the strength of the collective, that in itself creates something very special.
What this dynamic evolves to is that what historically was a one-way relationship between the landowner and the developer through his agent, he never went to the tenants, it was always through the agent, to the occupier is uniquely different now.
Yeah. Because
the relationship between, that historical relationship is under threat, because the relationship between that same landowner, that same building owner, and the independent collection is a much different relationship.
It is. I think it'd be mad not to understand the people that are paying you rent. Like, when you strip it all back, as a building owner, your business is collecting rent. Your product is the space. And if you don't understand your occupier, then you don't understand your customer. Your customer is the occupier. So if you lose touch with that, and actually retailers start to struggle because either the location isn't right, the customer has changed, a multitude of factors. They may, as a brand, just not have the strength they once had. But if you are not alive to that as an owner, then your income is at risk. And when you kind of strip it back to the financials, it's just good business sense to be,
it is, isn't it?
Speaking to your occupiers, understanding what motivates them, what drives them, and in turn understanding their customer. And I think if you start there, if you understand their customer, who is spending per square foot on your property, then you are in a much better place to deliver value both for the occupier and you as a property owner.
Yeah. And then working as you do with property owners, the occupancy differences are unique and special. The independents are really in a growth cycle.
Mm-hmm.
There's a great possibility that they could grow and grow and grow and be a big boy at one point in time,
Yeah,
very short period of time. It's been seen. It's nothing novel, to be fair. But they also generally don't fit it out. They don't. There's capital investment that's required to feed that.
And I think that's where actually investing your resource, be it people or money or whatever, you're investing in understanding the brand and what their capacity for growth is, whether or not they have an engaged audience, whether or not they are, growing a cult following. There's so many different things to look at. In the olden days, you'd look at the covenant and say, yeah, that's a sure bet for 10 years. Great, done. But now it's so much more than that. And actually, those landowners, property owners that are not alive to that are missing out on huge opportunities.
What you're suggesting then, and I find it really fascinating and enthusiastically so, is suddenly an owner has to find a narrative within his own business that supports and believes in this collection of free-thinking, innovative, novel people, to be able to invest in them, to be able to commit to them, to be able to help support them. He has to get behind them. Whereas, again, it was covenant, got a good covenant, ding, you're in.
Yeah.
This is something I get my heart around. My mind and heart have to be in line here to make this happen. That's a very, very big difference, isn't it?
Yeah. And if you ultimately don't believe in the product being sold from that premises, then that's not good rent. However much they're prepared to pay, whoever's backing them, if they can't sustain that and build on that, then it's not a good investment as a property owner. So you're looking at it from as a partner. These brands look for private equity investment, and actually, as a property owner, if you've got the right property, then you're an investor. Sure. You're investing in that brand and taking a punt on them. And I think, being due diligence on those from that perspective stands you in good stead. So when you look at the bigger developments, things that we've been looking at together, that's kind of the brand focus that is necessary. Integral. Yeah.
What's all this stuff about experience? Is that one of those little zing words like placemaking that no one knows what it is, but they have to say it?
Yeah, I mean, quite often it's said. There's a lot of developers and landowners that pay lip service to those buzzwords. But your side of our work is obviously creating the magic that is the place. But without the right brands, you can build the most beautiful, spectacular buildings that just sit there empty and woefully overlooked. If you align the fabulous buildings with fabulous brands,
alignment is so important.
It's a joint effort. So
important. I guess if I take it back my way, it goes back to what we started with earlier, is that the customer, the human being will have an experience when they engage something, someone, someplace that is aligned in interest, soul, mind, thinking, and curiosity that makes it unique and special. And so if it's not something that's not fairy dust, you can't drop it and flip it on and off or go buy an experience. It's you can't construct it. It has to happen. So the facilitation of that very often has to be the backing of a young brand or a new experience, a new product that brings that enough space to do it in. Give me enough physical space to do it. Looking at the newer brands or the younger brands, even the historic brands, and looking at their staff and their staff training and the engagement of those staff and making someone's day. And that experience can be, someone looked after me in the most remarkable way, to the point that I discovered something really, really special in this little spot that I've never known of before. But it's a human thing.
Yeah.
It's not a physical space thing. It's not a ticket and a meter thing. It's human.
And I think that's, been heightened by all the COVID fallout that we've had all of our leisure retail taken away from us for a period of time, and then when we've gone back to it, it's heightened the importance of the human interaction. That is absolutely at the heart of it, because we know we can survive from a purchaser consumer perspective without it. We know that we can, because we've ordered online, and we can just do the bare minimum, and that's just functional. But the actual pleasure in it comes from the human interaction, and if you don't have the brands that are invested in that, then you're not going to develop.
And it can happen on all levels.
Yeah,
it happens on all levels. It's really quite sensible to expect that. Let's move on to this thing called localism, fostered by COVID. I mean, so many fundamental things have been made to happen through the COVID experience, and a lot of them are still sort of finding their root, and it will take some time. But certainly, one that we're all seeing is, I'll call it working from home, but in many ways it's working while mobile. I can pop off of a tube and pop into a little cafe and have a meeting on Teams, whereas before I had to be there. So it's dynamic, it's flexible, but having the place to pop into that's of the right service, of the right setting, and of the meaningful support is really, really incredible. Or it's the working from home in the little local community, and the little micro, maybe less the micro, the mini centers are becoming more and more important. Again, it's another stream aligned with the bigger urbane retail. But how is that dynamic affecting your business?
I think it's, like you say, it's early days. The evolution of the retail industry is fast compared to the evolution of the property industry, and it's definitely still in a period of adjustment. The city centres are still adjusting to this split of hybrid working, this working from home, but then still needing the city centre to service those office workers when they're there. There's kind of this adjustment in expectation of level of sales, and actually if we have a store in the city centre, we are a shopfront for online sales as well. And so what I think there isn't transparency about yet, which hopefully might evolve, is the value of having that physical presence aligned with the value of the online presence. And that is, that's really something that's not quite there yet. And I think as property owners and landowners, we know that there is value in it. As occupiers, fiercely protective of the division of the investment in their property side of the business and in their online business. They invest heavily in the online business. We as property owners are not privy to that. And so there's still that really entrenched position between landowners and tenants. And I hope over many years probably, but I hope that it continues to evolve and that relationships continue to sort of grow and trust builds.
Because it's not an either or, is it?
It's not either or.
But it's a unique synergy that's finding its own balance. It's starting to find its. I mean, I work more from home now than I ever have, and I'm a consummate shopper, and I find myself gravitating to the West End just because. It's my home. It's my love of place. But I still also find the little local village services me in a way that I would never ever have been serviced 15 years ago, because I put on a suit, put on a tie, my Oxford, and I stomped into town at 9 a.m. and came back at 7. So the dynamic locally is that much more different now. And
I think that's there's probably just good for the nation.
Exactly.
Good for the nation that the death of the high street has been such a talked about topic for in the last decade, death of the high street, the mass exodus of the bigger brands on the high street, and because the spend wasn't there, because people were working in the city, and like you say, 9 till 7, when are you going to have time to spend in your local area? And that sort of shift, everyone tends to focus on the negative. Okay, well, this is impacting our shopping centres, it's impacting our city centres, but actually the flip side is that it's positive in our local areas, and it will just rebalance, it will settle down, and people will find a way, and rents will find a way to sustain both, and it will evolve.
It'll find its way.
It's an exciting time.
Okay, being one that orienteers by food, me, which you know well.
Which we know well.
We know well, yes, we know well. Food, very, very general. I'm looking for another word to describe it. The provision of sustenance and the joy of dining and libation. Consumption. There you go. Better word still. Has the proliferation is exceptional, and it's everything from the street food growing into mainline and mainstream. It's rich and dynamic and multi-level and diverse and really lovely. That made a big dent in your world, did it not? A
huge impact. And we're in the sort of traditional prime shopping centre world, there's had to be quite a sharp adjustment to the balance of retail and food and beverage, leisure offers, what were traditionally very retail heavy. Centres have had to rebalance and accommodate the customer demand, and the demand has kind of led the way. The demand is there, and actually it's just about accommodating it. I think there's some really exciting operators out there, and it's more accessible for where you try and shift the retail mix. It's almost a harder sell because people think differently about spending £100 on an item versus consuming £100.
I ran into that recently. It's like, well, what we dine for that? I mean, we blow 180 quid on dinner.
People think less about what they. It's really interesting.
And the other thing that's interesting about it is that the dining hours, the food consumption hours are a broader church and a broader day than the shopping hours.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's a bit of a stretch there, isn't there?
And almost every operator is looking at how to capture both ends of that day. They're an all-day offer. There's a lot of operators who traditionally may have been an evening-led, wet-led proposition, and now actually they will offer breakfast and brunch and pastries and coffees, and they service those agile workers that are,
One of the other big changes then, I think it's close to both of us, and where I think we are in our current thinking is, the mechanic of leasing. You've let multiple shopping centers. You've done a ton. I have built those silly buildings. What I've learned, and I think what we share, is that it's all about the point of departure. It's when you start. It's not when you're leasing the shops. If the origin of thought, the origin of narrative when a project begins is rich and considered and then bought into and engaged by the entire team, the product is that much better. And that thinking is ever more important now, where the dynamic changes so bloody fast that you have to actually regroup when you start and go, okay, now what are we drawing on? What are we taking from the past, and what are we going forward with? And that's where I get into my little diatribe about the I think, because the I think is what we've done in the past. The I wish and I wonder and what if is where we're really coming from. That's what we love doing. How much of that informs your process and what you care to do?
I think.
Okay, that's a lot.
I think that when you are looking at a development from the ground up, it's a very different prospect than things that we've looked at together, where you're sort of trying to reimagine things that have gone before and say, hands up, this doesn't work, and actually acknowledging the mistakes of the past or the oversights, or just that things have changed and that's okay, and actually we need to think about this differently now, and is really powerful. If you try and continue the narrative when it's no longer fit for purpose, then it's a road to nowhere. And actually I think there's more and more openness to that, and people are more receptive to the fact that we have assets, centres, shopping districts, whatever you want to call them, buildings that have lived their life and are in need of that new narrative.
That new dynamic, yeah, absolutely true. Well, one closer.
I'm nervous.
Should be. Because I ask myself this as well, because I think my own personal behavior as a consumer informs what I do. It has to. So in your world, as a consumer, as Rachel, as an individual, as a family, and social, business, how does how you do what you do inform your perspective and view in terms of your business and how you advise? Or does it?
It does, yeah. I think it's very easy when you're in work mode and you're working for a certain brand or landowner or corporate, you immediately get around the table with, more often than not, very similar people in very similar situations.
True.
And you think,
hadn't thought of that.
This is a lovely brand. Yeah, I like this brand. Do you like this brand? Oh yes, this is a nice brand. And you sit around the table and think, yeah, we'd love to get that brand, and off we go. And as a consumer, I shop both ends of the spectrum, probably one more than the other, and more often than not, you get caught up in this aspirational, drive to, seek higher caliber of tenants or brands that sound nice and actually. I do often check myself as to, is this brand that would be a real coup, is this brand right for the people on the street that are going to walk past this shop more often than me? When you're not that customer, you have to check back. And as a consumer, over the last 5 years, my life has changed dramatically, and now I use high street brands for the children that I wouldn't have shopped in for 20 years. So you evolve.
Do you find yourself, because of your industry and the exposure you have to so many of these things, do you find yourself in consumables, in fashion, in dining, in food and beverage, being more adventurous, being provocative, or does it kind of come back to the?
I would like to be
to the comfort of staples.
I'd like to be. I look to you, Paul, because you're always being more adventurous. You put me to shame.
It's fun.
I think naturally my work has taken me in a quite a mainstream direction, and therefore a lot of my time is taken up with that. And yet when I get those little glimmers of what else is out there, I'm always intrigued and drawn.
Well, it's a world today that has so many interesting things happening, and it's all what we're working with, of trying to bring it together into one consistent voice.
It's fun.
And we'll find success with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.